Hello, my friends. Jill Osborne from the Interstitial Cystitis Network. It is Sunday, November 5th, and it's a cold and rainy day here in California. So I hope that you are nice, warm, and cozy in your homes as we settle into the quiet part of the year, the calm, the celebratory, the peaceful, the season filled with gratitude. Ah, summer is over, fall is here, cool weather is beckoning, and this is when we get to snuggle and be comfortable at home. Hello, Samara. Hello, Donna. My name is Jill Osborne. I'm the president and founder of the Interstitial Cystitis Network. We are a health education company dedicated to IC, chronic pelvic pain, and widespread pain. Why do I say that? Because now we know that many IC patients actually have different diagnoses. That not every patient has a bladder issue. Many of us, myself included, have a central nervous system issue or a muscle issue. Hello, Deborah in LA. It's so nice to see you. So we are expanding our focus. I have so many projects underway right now. My head actually is almost spinning. Lots and lots and lots of ideas for the rest of this year and next year. Hello, Surti Aria. So you guys, I'm simulcasting. So if I'm looking here, I'm looking at Facebook and YouTube. Okay, but I can see Facebook here, but I have to look over here at this computer to look at YouTube. Now, just so you know, we are having a storm, and the power pole that innervates our home or electrifies our home was sparking a little while ago. So if I suddenly disappear, it means that the power has gone out. You know, life is always an adventure. Normally, when I do these meetings, I do a little 30-minute intro and then I take your questions. And I want to share something that happened yesterday. How do I want to say this? I want to say this the right way. Donna says, I can't wait to hear about all the new projects. Yeah, some of them I have to, I got a lot of stuff going on up here right now. And I want to partner with several different companies, but I've got to get NDAs from them first because I don't want them to take my idea. Okay. Do you know somebody who just didn't launch their life well? Somebody who went to high school, even went to college, but when it came time to kind of diving into the joys of being young, dating, having married, getting married, having babies, some people don't jump that direction. Some people stay home. Some people are more comfortable at home. I was one of those people. And the question is, why? Why? And I spent the day with somebody that I love dearly, good friend. And there was a family member who just didn't quite launch. Now, this is a very delicate topic. And so my experience was, now granted, I had my first urinary symptoms in junior high. I had vulvodynia in high school. I had IBS in my early 20s. In fact, IBS hit in the middle of my first big career job. And it got really, really bad. Where I have no shame. I will talk about anything. My IBS was so bad that, and I was working in San Francisco, 90 miles away. I'd take a 2-hour bus ride to work, 2-hour bus ride home. Brutal. And we went out to eat lunch. And we got Chinese food. And what do you think happened to me? Yeah, think about it. MSG. I spent hours on the toilet at work. Hours. And then I had to figure out how to get home because the 2-hour bus ride didn't have a bathroom. Now, these are kind of the issues that people with IC and or IBS face sometimes. Well, I made it home. Thankfully, I was empty. Took the last bus. I was empty. Praise God, hallelujah. And I made it home. But when you live with a condition like that, that ties you unpredictably to a bathroom or to your home, emphasis here on unpredictably, are you comfortable going out and socializing? No, of course not. Um, and Facebook here, you guys, Facebook's being a little funky. This internet's being a little funky. This is Comcast. Facebook's on Comcast. YouTube is on AT&T. Now, you know what's going on. You know exactly what's going on. Nobody can tell you're having cramping. And if you have family members who are like, well, Jill, why aren't you going out and meeting people? Why aren't you going out and taking classes? Why aren't you going out and doing this? And you're going, are you freaking blind? Do you not see how I am in the bathroom every 45 minutes? How can I do that? How can I go enjoy a movie? How can I do this? How can I do that? Right? And so when you're the patient and you're dealing with people in your family that are just a wee bit on the, I don't know if I believe you or not, or they might believe you. And of course, they love you, but there's always that, can you just try a little bit harder? And you're trying. You've never worked so hard in your life as you are at this very moment. You're working dang hard to live a life when you're struggling with IC, bladder pain syndrome, pelvic pain syndrome, etc. And then you get kind of the labels. You get the labels. Oh, that's Jill. Isn't she better now? Oh, come on. Can't you just drink cranberry juice and get better? Can't you do this and get better? God forbid you go to a family gathering and there's Aunt such and such, the critic of the family, who goes, "Oh, honey, I got rid of it drinking the juice of a lemon." And you're just like literally like hiding in your body, just trying to be comfortable, trying to be safe, trying to be um, not a source of uh, disagreement in your family. You're just trying to live. But it's really hard sometimes to explain what's going on. And it's really hard sometimes for the people who love you to understand what you're going through. And this is what I do know, that a lot of us hide it. Why? Because we don't want to be the troublemaker. We don't want to be the disappointment. We don't want anybody to know that we're not feeling well, because God forbid if Jill doesn't feel good, because in our brains, sometimes we think we don't deserve it. And I'm here to tell you that there is no shame. There is no blame. You were hurt. You were hurt. Do not let anybody take your pride. Do not let anybody rob you of your dreams. Do not let anybody take away your freaking hope. Now I've been reading Arnold Schwarzenegger's Be Useful book. I love that book. I love that book because he says you have the right to have a dream. You have a right to pursue that dream. It is your responsibility to work steadily, slowly, and steadily towards that dream. We can't let anybody else live our life. We got to live our life. We can't let anybody else take responsibility for our health. We're the ones who have to take responsibility for our health. So anyway, I found myself in a kind of an interesting situation yesterday in the sense that um, I met another family member who shared my journey and had all the symptoms of central sensitization and widespread pain, super sensitive skin, wicked sense of smell, sensitivity to lights, all that sort of stuff. And the blessing is I was able to say, you're not alone. You're not alone. I can explain exactly what's happening to you right now. That central sensitization, why you have the sensitive skin. And most importantly, I can give you hope because there are things that can help. Because when you're the patient, you're trying to figure it out all on your own. And of course, you're hiding it. You don't have to hide it anymore. There are people who have been through this journey. There are people here who want to help. And I am living proof that with widespread pain, you can get better because I am symptom free now. I do not have IC symptoms. I do not have IBS symptoms. I do not have vulvodynia anymore. What I do have is TMJ, which is annoying the heck out of me. Why am I better? Number one, I got the right diagnosis. I am not a bladder wall patient. I am a nerve and muscle patient. Bladder treatments never worked for me. What worked for me was physical therapy, calming my muscles down, and most importantly, things that address these uber sensitive nerves. And it was I drove away feeling so good to be able to be that lifeline and to reach out my hand and give a hug and say, "You're a great person. This is not your fault. We can work on this." And then trying to validate that. We validate that with family members. Now, I realize that some people in my life, like in this case, had no idea what my early history was. They had no idea what my life was like, and I got to share some stories to explain why I am the person I am today, and the struggles that I had when I was younger, and the things that I did that got better. And so, I guess the moral of, I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is you've done nothing wrong. And I don't want anybody to carry any shame, any burden, any self-doubt, any worry that you made this happen because you did not make this happen. You were hurt, you were injured, you were traumatized in some way. And that injury either happened in the bladder or it happened to the muscles or it happened to the nerves. And I have just this morning just got off the phone. I've been working. Listen, I got up early this morning. Don't ask me why. My head was just, I got too many ideas going on in my head. Just finishing up. I'll give you a sneak peek at the cover of our magazine, although the headlines are wrong. This is the cover of our fall magazine. It will be going to the printer tomorrow. It will be up on our website probably by Wednesday, where we are talking about the role of those early injuries that sometimes happen in childhood. And so I'm really excited. I think this is a really, really good, it was a hard issue to write, but it's a good issue. Now, other than that, I got asked to speak at another international conference in January, so that's going to be fun. We don't have any new IC research other than the research we're going to go through in this. And let me hold on a sec. So we got the UTI vaccines coming out. Those are very exciting. I just have a fantastic article, and I was able to reprint. Hold on a sec. Let's see if there's something here that I can share with you today. And then, guys, I will stay as long as you have questions. As long as you have questions. So the new research, yet again, we now have absolute support for phenotyping. Wanna hold that question on. I'll be right with you. So our biggest federal researchers also now admit that yes, we have distinct patient groups, each group requiring their own unique treatments. So now when people say, "Hey, is there a cure for IC? Isn't there one treatment that will work for everybody?" And the answer, of course, is no, of course not, because we're not all the same. Now, if you have pelvic floor, yes, we've got treatment that will help you tremendously. Pelvic floor physical therapy. If you've got central sensitization, then absolutely yes, there are things that we can do to calm your nervous system. If you've got Hunner's lesions, there are things that we can do for that. If you've got estrogen atrophy, there are things that we can do for that, but not everybody matches up. So that whole search for one treatment fits all, give it up. It ain't gonna happen. Number two, we have another research study. Okay, Buana, hold that thought. Physical therapy is yet again more effective than bladder treatments. Substantially better. And remember when our first physical therapy study came out in 2008, that put the IC world on its head, because up to then everybody was going bladder disease. Not a bladder disease. For most of us, it's a neuromuscular condition. Hydrodistension is helpful over time. The thing about a hydrodistension is that it really allows the doctor to look closely at your bladder, but it's not required for a diagnosis of IC. But if they don't understand why you're having these symptoms and they suspect that you might have Hunner's lesions, then yes, you probably want to let them look in your bladder to figure out why you're in pain. Make sure you don't have lesions. Here's a very, very interesting study about fibromyalgia. Do IC patients show signs of fibromyalgia? And the answer, of course, is yes. If you're in the widespread pain group, you absolutely are going to show more symptoms of other pain conditions like fibromyalgia. So that's not surprising. Small fiber polyneuropathy. Why do we have sensitive skin? Because the nerves in the skin become more sensitive. That also, yet again, has been found in a distinct subset. 30% of patients with the diagnosis of IC have small fiber polyneuropathy. So the question is the 30% of the patient community that widespread pain central sensitization subtype? The answer is, well, yes. This does not come as a surprise. We've got the UTI vaccine. Another question is the UTI vaccine helpful for IC? And they did, now remember, we may have a very small subset of IC patients with either chronic infection or they're having sensitivity to healthy bacteria in the bladder. And I think this was Curtis Nickel again. They used the vaccine on IC patients with a proven track record of recurring UTI. And also, let's see, all subjects completed 3-month vaccination period. 6 subjects were UTI free, while 16 had a significant reduction in UTI compared to the previous year. 80% improvement with the UTI vaccine. So let us hope that MV140 gets down here to the United States very quickly. If you are in Canada, if you are in Europe, you already probably have access to it. In the United States, we do not have access to it yet because the FDA wants lots of research. Let's see what else here. That's very interesting. Another very interesting study, because as we are trying to understand how the bladder works in the urinary biome and how do things change in a bad way versus a good way, we have research now that if you go up into space, your biome changes in your bladder, and when you come back down, it gets better. Go figure. And then we have yet another study on microgen next generation DNA urine testing. And I will say microgen also did the space flight study where they took urine samples of astronauts going up to the International Space Station. Microgen did the analysis for that. And so we have yet another study on microgen urine testing. 122 patients were reviewed, 116 of which had identifiable bacteria, and 17 or 14% had identifiable fungi. Of these, 95% of these patients had negative urine cultures, and yet when they did the next gen test, they found stuff. So most patients with lower urinary tract symptoms and a negative standard urine culture have identifiable pathological microbes on next generation DNA urine testing. However, they're still trying to do some correlation uh, uh, and validation. And that was something Dr. Ann Ackerman talked about at the AUA conference on IC. They're unclear as to symptomatic improvement with targeted antimicrobial treatment, which only half of the patients got better and the other half didn't. So obviously they have to do more research with that. So I don't expect too many more IC research studies to be released this year. Please know that we have 2 active clinical trials on our website seeking patients to participate. One of those trials is testing a new pain method, and it's testing a new topical foam that is inserted into the rectum that silences the same bundle of nerves that the bladder innervates at the spinal cord. This is very valid. This is a fascinating, fascinating study. And they've got the preliminary data that supports it. And so if you're looking for another way of trying to reduce pain and discomfort, this is a study that you can participate in. And if you go right to the front page of our website, icnetwork.org, and you go down to our blog, you'll see 2 separate clinical trial announcements. And then we have that second clinical trial too that is currently seeking patients with a new therapy for IC. So what is the advantage of participating in a clinical trial? Free healthcare, working with the best doctors in the country. And so for those patients who have kind of exceeded their doctor's ability, or they're just not responding to therapies, and you want to give perhaps one of these new experimental treatments a try, that's what clinical trial recruitment is all about. I'm very involved in that because every clinical trial that comes out is hope to me. It is absolute hope to me. And I want us to find the most effective treatments, but it takes patients like you to give us the gift of your time and the gift kind of your symptoms and of your bladder to try some of these experimental medications. And when they normally will have you click on a link or call somebody. There are going to be screening questions. We've got studies for men, we've got studies for women. Sometimes you qualify, sometimes you don't qualify. There are studies around the world right now. But I've got the currently active ones that I'm working with right now on the front page of our website. So speaking of next gen testing, Juana here. Hello, Mary. As I've been suffering with flares off and on for 1 year, now I got a major flare. I did a urine culture and it was negative, but my microgen shows Klebsiella, which was exactly what that study that I was just talking to found. And we know this. We know that urine cultures are ineffective. A urine culture, the reason why urine cultures miss so much is because they're trying to culture or grow a bacteria. But to grow a bacteria, you have to give it food. That's what the culture is. The problem is not all bacteria eat the same food. And so if you use a certain type of food, it's only going to grow out the bacteria that will eat that certain food, and it will miss everything else. And that is why next generation DNA urine testing is absolutely the future of urine testing, because it doesn't rely on that. It just looks for DNA. And so in this case, Juana says microgen found Klebsiella. And then she says, but my urologist says I have IC. So here's the thing, Juana. IC doesn't mean anything. And everybody admits that. Interstitial cystitis, that term was first used in the early 1900s, back when they thought that IC was a bladder disease of the interstitial layer of the bladder wall. That has never been found. Researchers for the last 30 years everybody has said interstitial cystitis is absolutely the wrong name because it's not an interstitial problem. And in Europe, and mostly around the world, they're only using the term interstitial cystitis for patients with Hunner's lesions. For the rest of us, it is bladder pain syndrome. So now we're talking about a syndrome for which there are many potential causes. Many potential causes for some, and that's the advantage of coming to a support group like this, is you get to meet the diversity, meet and witness and see the diversity in this patient population. We're not all the same. For some people, IC begins in childhood. For others, after menopause. For some people, IC begins while going through chemotherapy. I was working with a patient last week. For another, IC begins after having a baby. I was working with another patient who had a really terrible birth injury that began her symptoms. So we have the same diagnosis, but are we all absolutely the same? The answer is no, we're not. And this is why we now do something called phenotyping. We want to try to find your underlying cause. Is it your bladder wall? Is it your pelvic floor and muscles? Is it your nerves? And if you come on over to the IC Network website, which is icnetwork.org, in our About IC section, there's something called subtypes and phenotypes. You need to read that so that we can try to dig deeper than this diagnosis of IC to try to find the real underlying cause. Now, the fact that you've got Klebsiella, which is a pathogenic bacteria, is important. That means that you have something that is off down there. And treating that would normally be done. So, has your doctor said they're not going to treat it? That would be kind of challenging. If you've got an active infection, that infection should be treated. And there are lots of different types of infections out there. Serdiera says, I have too many questions. When is a good time to call me? Later next week. Listen, I'm probably not till Wednesday. Tomorrow is my day off, but I actually have stuff I've got to do tomorrow. And Tuesday, we're doing some estate issues for my family, for my parents' estate. And so I'm going to be with attorneys for a couple hours on Tuesday. So I don't know when I'm going to get back. So I would say from Wednesday on. When I drink ginger ale, it triggers symptoms and it's a lot of pressure and urination. Well, ginger ale can be acidic, hon. So that would trigger more symptoms. Buana says, mine started after a UTI last year. My flares never went away and it was Klebsiella. Now, after 1 year, it is back. I'm treating it right now with antibiotics. Good. And I hope that they gave you the next generation test from Microgen, gave you that list of the most effective antibiotics to treat your infection. Okay, hold on a second. Let's come back here to Facebook now. Hello, Paula. Hello, Gay. How am I doing? How am I doing? I'm a little tired. I feel good. I'm just a little tired, you know. It's been a long week and a lot of talking. My TMJ is talking to me a little bit. Anne, hi, Anne. Nice to see you. Hi, Renee. I'm good. Loretta says this is an excellent topic. Thank you, Loretta. Amy says, I haven't checked in for a while. Wanted to update you. My 8-month flare ended last month, and I'm back to doing my installations every 2 to 3 weeks. You're back now to eating and drinking my normal food, and life is much improved. Oh, I'm so glad, Amy. I'm so glad. Just remember, you got to protect your bladder. So please don't start diving into drinking a lot of coffee or a lot of soda. Okay? Go back to your normal food. Eat a good, healthy, balanced diet. But your bladder has shown you now that it can be injured, and it has been injured. it is healed, but it can be injured again. So you really want to protect it. Anne says, thank you for the flowers. Those are actually, that's a flower arrangement I got at an estate sale like 20 years ago. I keep almost everything, but I'm not a hoarder. I only keep the important things, like things I can decorate with. Diane says, I'm too old. They won't take you if you're over 70 and I'm 71. Some studies will go a little bit older than that, but every study is a little bit different. I'm sorry about that, Diane. I am sorry about that. I'm going to be there sooner rather than later myself. Amy says, I will say I started Dupexent 4 months ago for another condition that may have helped my IC. My general practitioner is not surprised as it reduces inflammation. Good. Excellent. I'm really, really glad that it worked. Peter says, what's my link for supplements? Just going over to the ICN store. There you go. Right on the front page, you'll see some supplement sample. Let's see. Hi, Diane. All right. Buana says, do I believe in embedded infections? Heard those are hard to treat because they have biofilms. Wait here. Hold on. Before Buana, I have to go to Jennifer. Hello, Jennifer in Wisconsin. It's so nice to see you. You had a DNC and polypectomy on October 31st. Girl, how are you doing? How are you doing? Tell me, because I have shared your journey. I didn't find, I mean, with the DNC, I was definitely uncomfortable for 4 or 5 days, maybe. That's a hell of a way to spend Halloween. Talk about, wow. Yeah, that's a heck of a way to spend Halloween having a DNC. How did it go? That's what I want to know. Buana says, do I believe in embedded infections? I heard those are hard to treat. Okay, hold on. Jennifer, girl, we are sisters. Well, mine was exactly the same with a polyp. I had a big old white polyp, looked like a giant tongue in the middle of my uterus. Um, yeah. Okay. Now let me go back here to um, uh, Buana here. Do I believe in embedded infections? I do. Do I believe in biofilms? I do, but not for everybody. There are a group of people out there who believe that every single IC patient is an embedded infection patient, and that we all have a deep, what we call fastidious infection. And there are people out there saying you need to be on antibiotics for a long time to kill it. That theory has been pretty much disproven in our urinary biome studies, as well as in our subtyping studies. So I focus primarily on 5 distinct groups. I use the original phenotyping. So Hunner's lesions, and now we know Hunner's lesions can be viral infections from Epstein-Barr or from polyoma. Number 2, bladder wall driven. That's going to be chemical injury of the bladder or estrogen atrophy in the bladder or an infection, but that's a small subtype. Our biggest subtype is not infection driven. It is pelvic floor. 80% of IC patients have tight hypertonic pelvic floor muscles. And there's a legacy and problem with long-term tension in your pelvic floor because it starts to restrict blood supply. I also support that with the research done by Dr. Ann Ackerman at UCLA, where she looked at the biome based upon subtype, and she found completely normal bacteria biome in patients with pelvic floor driven symptoms. She found patients who had pain outside of the bladder had more E. coli. The patients who had pain on bladder fill had an overabundance of good bacteria, not pathogenic bacteria, but actually good bacteria. We were less diverse, but we had more lactobacilli, But when we looked at that closer, we had a not a good lactobacilli called Lactobacillus iners. And the question then, and Lactobacillus iners, they didn't even know about until 4 to 5 years ago when they were playing with growth mediums, and they added a little bit of blood to a growth medium to try to grow bacteria out of urine, and popped up this brand new lactobacillus infection called Lactobacillus iners. And Lactobacillus iners is an opportunistic lactobacillus that is not associated with a good outcome. Patients who are overabundant in Lactobacillus iners are going to be more prone to bacterial vaginosis and more prone to kind of a poor long-term outcome. So based upon that research, the use of long-term antibiotics absolutely makes no sense at all, because that's when Lactobacillus iners prospers. And I've talked about that in depth, and I can talk about that a little bit more. I know I'm going a little bit fast with that. But I don't believe in treating IC patients with long-term antibiotics. And I don't know any IC researcher who does. But if you have any doubt, you can do a next generation DNA urine test, and that will help us to understand a little bit more about what's going on in the bladder. But we really have to wait for the next round of studies from Dr. Ackerman, who is the national biome specialist, who is the one who's going to lead the way with helping us to understand any bacterial influences in that small group of patients who might have a bacterial subtype. I hope that that made sense. Jennifer says, what does an endometrial polyp mean? It's just a growth of tissue. Polyp. If you have a colonoscopy, they look for polyps, and they will usually remove them when they find them, because sometimes polyps can turn into cancer. And so polyps in the uterus, they want to remove them, and then they will generally look at it under a microscope and do some pathology on it to try to understand the cells that make it. If they are atypical cells, we call them atypical or abnormal cells. That's when they want to look a little bit more closely at that, because it's the atypia. It's called complex endometrial hyperplasia. Hyperplasia means you've got endometrium that is just growing, and it's grown a polyp, which in many cases is fine. But if it is now turned into atypical cells, those are the cells that can be associated with cancer. And that's why they looked for you. Yeah, that's why it was so incredibly important that you had that DNC. And based upon those results, in my case, we went with a hysterectomy because I had atypical cells. And my biopsy was sent to Stanford University, which shocked me because that's like 150 miles away. And Stanford said, complex endometrial hyperplasia with atypia, those are the cells that are bad, and a vague architectural complex, which meant it was starting to build something like a tumor. And so that's why my doctor said, we need to do a hysterectomy because it's starting to build. And that's exactly why I had a hysterectomy. If you go back in time, I actually have oh God, when did I do it? The crazy thing about hysterectomies is they're outpatient procedures now, and like you're home 2 hours later, 3 hours later. I was home so quickly. I I would, you're just shocked. Here you've had major surgery, and you've got maybe an hour in the recovery room, and they throw your clothes on, throw you in a car, and send you home, and you're like going, "What?" No, I actually filmed a video that night. I think it's on YouTube. And then, yeah, it was pretty bad, and pretty funny. Surya said, "I think you answered my question." Good. Jennifer, if you need to talk about it, give me a phone call, honey. I'll help you with that. You're not alone, girl. You're not alone. This is done all the time. DNCs are very, very common. Millions of women have had them done. They just need to look. If you've got funky bleeding going on, they need to look. So good on you that you let them look. Now we just need a little bit more information to try to understand it. All right. Diane says, I've got a TENS machine and I'm wondering how to use it for pelvic floor pain. And is there any info out on the website or on YouTube? The best info is, hold on. The best information is actually in this book, Ending Female Pelvic Pain, because this is the book that shows you where to put the TENS unit pads. But I have not been able to order this book for the ICN store since before COVID. I think it's out of print. You might be able to get it on Amazon. I don't know. But let me just go ahead and show you. I can just show you some of the pictures. So this is a book called Ending Female Pain by Isa Herrera. Isa, I-S-A, Herrera, Herrera. And she is a physical therapist, and a very famous physical therapist in New York. And she calls so let's see, let me go to this chapter. She explains how to use a tennis ball to get your piriformis to release, which I've done many, many times, how to use a Theracane. And there's a section in here on the TENS unit. So let me just read this for you. TENS is a non-invasive, non-addictive, drug-free tool that helps many of my patients manage their pelvic pain. You will have to get a prescription from your doctor to get a TENS unit. That's not true anymore. You can just get them on Amazon for like under 30 bucks. And sometimes your insurance will cover it. So how does it work? Soft conductive pads transmit low voltage electrical impulses to areas where the pads are placed. These electrical impulses suppress pain by blocking pain signals before they reach the brain. Pain relief varies among individuals. You can wear a TENS unit throughout the day during your daily activities. There are smaller ones, there are bigger ones, but finding the right place to put the pads is key. So let me okay. So the first place she talks about, and this is for general pelvic pain, is kind of straight up the back here. I've never done it there. Here are the positions for the lower back, 4 pads side by side. And then here's another, this is, what does she say here? For the glute muscles, you can put 2 pads, again, up by your waist on either side, but then you can put a pad over your left and over your right glute. Okay, I really hate showing booties. I just got to put my finger over her booty. Let me see if I can do that. Okay. If you can see this, picture, she's got 2 pads up by her waist, and then she's got 2 pads literally at the very bottom of her butt cheek on both sides. If you can see that. See those pads down low? For the bladder? No. I'm sorry. I'm trying not to show booty. Okay. Let me just try. Okay. The booty is covered. For the bladder, you can see that she has it along the bikini line below the belly button. Okay. There you go. The big problem, the thing you got to understand about TENS units is More is not better. You never turn it on to the point that it's hurting. If you do that, you're damaging nerves. A TENS unit should never hurt. More is not better. And ideally, you can work with a physical therapist to find the correct settings for your TENS unit. That's something that she does not talk about. That's something that I don't talk about. That's something that you need to get from a physical therapist who will guide you correctly on how to do it. So, for the most part, TENS units are done on the lower back, over the glute, and along the bikini line. Now, for pain relief, I will tell you when I flew to London to speak on IC on the BBC with a doctor, and I was having a flare on the plane. Oh, dear Lord. And I brought my microwavable heating pad to use on the plane, but guess what? They don't have microwaves. I had a TENS unit and I put the pads on the inside of my thighs. And my purpose there was to just create a distraction. That if I had something, and you can do it just by slapping your thigh. You can hear me slapping my thigh. That's another way of kind of getting your brain to pay attention to something else other than your throbbing bladder. This was discovered back in the leprosy clinics a couple hundred years ago. No, was it a couple hundred years ago? Maybe 100 years ago, where pain researchers went to study pain in India at the leprosy clinics, and as they walked in the door, they slapped their thigh. The patients were slapping their thighs, sitting outside the clinic waiting to be seen. And the doctors who were visiting went up and said, "Why are you slapping your thigh?" And they said, "Well, it helps reduce the pain." And now we know why. It's called the spinal gate theory. The way pain is processed in your brain, you have to understand that you've got tens of thousands of pain nerves. And if they're all firing at once, your brain is going to be completely overloaded. And so as I sit here, okay, what pain do I have? I've got a little bit of pain in my jaw, I've got a little bit of pain in my glutes, I've got a little bit of pain at the bottom of my feet. And I just had a little zinger right there, which happens every now and then, breast pain. So the spine, so pain comes from the periphery to the spinal cord. And when it gets to the spinal cord, it shoots up to your brain. And it goes through 3 levels of brain processing. The lowest level of the brain is the spinal gate. It only lets the most important pain messages through. And so if you have fallen, well, let's say you have a UTI and your bladder's screaming at you for a couple of days, but then you step on a nail. When you step on the nail, are you going to feel the UTI? No, you're not. That immediate deep pain from that stepping on that nail takes priority. And that's what goes to the midbrain. The midbrain then establishes context. Is this good pain or bad pain? If you are laughing and you have a good, healthy state of emotions and all that sort of stuff, your brain's going to go, well, she's laughing. She must not be dying. Therefore, I don't need to act. Like if you're riding a roller coaster and you're thrown to the side of the roller coaster car on a curve, that's not serious pain. And because you're laughing, your brain knows that's not serious pain. And so it kind of minimizes the pain and kind of pulls it to the side. But if that pain is accompanied by tears and you're anxious and you're stressed, that part of the brain goes, uh-oh, this is serious pain. It then intensifies the pain and sends it to the top level of pain processing in your brain. And that's the part that gets you to take action. So if you put your hand on something hot, that part of the brain moves your hand really quickly. This is instantaneous. So a good way to reduce, there are two very important things that you can do to reduce pain. Number one, distraction. Distraction. That TENS unit is distraction. Doing a puzzle is distraction. Giving your brain another source of stimulation is a good distraction to get that spinal gate focusing on something else. And then the second thing that you can do is focus on anxiety. If we can bring your anxiety level down, then we're going to bring the pain level down. The book that explains that is a fantastic book that we sell. It's a little tiny book, super easy to read. Let me find it. Where is it? Where is this cute little book? I just had it. I swear I just had it. I've got too many things going on here. Where is it? Okay, well, my demo copy has done a runner, but it's in the IC Network store. Let me go there and I can give you the title here. Give me one quick sec. Come on, I swear it was right over there. Okay, hold on. So the name of this book, super easy to read, because I was just demoing it to somebody last week. So, I mean, I held it up to the Zoom call so they could see it. Okay, so the name of the book is When It Hurts Down There, and it is a purple book with a woman on a beach doing a yoga pose by Dr. Angie Storr, 15 proven techniques to alleviate pelvic pain. It's $24.95, super easy to read, would really help you if you're struggling with pain. Because listen, if you're struggling with pain, you got to learn about this stuff because there are ways, it's not hopeless. There are ways of reducing pain sensation. Okay, hold on a sec. What just happened here? Okay, hold on a sec. Facebook is being funky. I think we just lost Facebook. Hey, Donna, can you go check our Facebook channel and see if we're still streaming? I think it just had an error and closed. Hold on a sec. What? I'm telling you. Maybe that internet went out. Hold on. I knew with this storm, this was going to be a crazy day. It says we're still streaming. It just won't show me that we're streaming. It says I'm live. And yet the window has done a runner. Well, darn. That's crazy. Where did the window go? It's not there. Sorry, guys. This is just technology, Okay, so guys, it's okay. I'm just gonna have to look over here at the questions. Let me see if it will show me the Facebook questions over here because the window has closed on my streaming computer. That is wacky. That's not it. I mean, it says, I stream on Chrome, and yet it says Chrome is closed. That is so weird. Sorry, guys. I do bladders. I know bladders. Computer stuff. I'm pretty good at web stuff and computer stuff. And the window just disappeared. Okay, so for those of you on Facebook, what you could do is you just come on over to my YouTube channel. Just search for it's youtube.com ICN Jill. And you can watch over there, but I cannot see your questions now. Well, let me try. Hold on. Okay. It says, I'm on Facebook. Yeah, you see me, but I can't see you. I can't see you when I'm on my streaming computer. I can see you when I'm on, but I can see you on my other computer that's on right now. But it won't let me scroll back and see your question. The gremlins have struck. The gremlins have struck. Okay. So if you have a question, go ahead and type it. Just know that on Facebook, I haven't seen your questions in the last 5 minutes. So you have to ask them, and please don't take it personally. That is the joy of the internet. Okay, so here on YouTube, let's see. Eddie says, "Hello, Eddie." Oh wait, here, hold on. Jennifer said, "This is the third time I've had postmenopausal bleeding during the past 3 years. My doctor realized." Serteria says, "So if my bladder is irritated by drinks and food, is that pelvic floor dysfunction?" It can be if your muscles are so tight they're restricting blood to your bladder wall. Yes, very, very normal for patients to have a vulnerable bladder when they have very, very tight muscles because your bladder is being deprived of oxygen and nutrition because your muscles are so tight. Our therapeutic priority for the pelvic floor patient is to do physical therapy to get the blood flowing again. We got to get the blood flowing again to the bladder. And generally, when we do that, the bladder has a chance to heal more effectively. Sudaria says, "What phenotype?" You know, I'm telling you. Let's see if I can just move this computer and make it a little bit more. Okay. Okay. So weird. Okay. Sudaria says, what phenotype I do have centralized and high tone. Me too. And so what does that mean then? That means you got to work on your muscles and you got to work on calming your nerves down. Jennifer says, I was originally found out about this when you were having physical therapy. Okay. I'm glad the physical therapist caught that for you. That's important. Eddie says, had a cystoscopy done last week and my doctor said my urethra had scarring. In it, and the doctor said he couldn't even get the scope into my bladder because the opening was too small, so he couldn't check for Hunner's lesions. Is scarring in the urethra a sign of Hunner's or no? Scarring in the urethra is usually from trauma, maybe from endometriosis attached to the urethra, or from repeated urinary tract infections. So, but not, I don't believe it's associated with Hunner's lesions at all. Okay, Sandy's on YouTube, Diane's on YouTube, Danielle's back on YouTube. Thank you guys. You know, I can switch and move my camera over to this computer, but then Facebook's going to see the side of my face. Danielle said, my vulva has been on fire. It feels like paper cuts. All right, so Danielle, quality and health of the skin. Is your skin healthy? But remember that muscles are immediately underneath that skin. I used to, oh, okay, now here we go. Facebook has now shut down for sure. Darn it. And there's some good questions. Okay, hold on. Let me just restart Facebook and see if I can get it up and running again. Goodness gracious sakes alive. It is that kind of day. Give me one quick sec here. I got to reset my stream so we can stop that, stop that. All right, let me go here. Switch there. All right, now we're going to IC Network. One sec, guys. Please be patient. Live video. Go live. It's Facebook. You guys, it's Facebook. Facebook is unhappy right now. They won't even, okay. Very slow to load. Let's see if it'll let me do anything here. Hold on. Let me copy that. Go here. Go here. Okay, let me just do that real quick. And make sure we have sound on Facebook. We do. Okay. Start streaming. Okay. Live IC BPS support part 2. All right. Okay, so I'm just restarting that. Oh, on Facebook. I gotta do that button. Okay. So we might be live again on Facebook. Let's see. Thank you, YouTube. You guys, just one more second. Let me just see if that worked. It did not work. I do not see it working. Nope. All right. For those of you who are on Facebook, we're done with Facebook for today. It is not a happy streaming platform right now. So we're just going to do YouTube. So let me just move this camera over here. Now you're going to see, oh, well, you might see my icky office, but it is what it is. And here, okay, hold on. Dear me. There you go. Now you get to see the other part of my office, but that's okay. At least I can look here now and see what you're saying. Erica says, has there ever been any research connecting IC with burning mouth syndrome? We know that estrogen atrophy, aging can cause burning mouth syndrome. Estrogen atrophy is absolutely a phenotype of IC. So I would say we can connect those dots and say, yes, there is definitely a connection. Very common symptom of menopause, burning mouth. Diane says, my urologist brought up implanting. Here, let me just turn this off here. All right. My urologist brought up implanting a sacral neuromodulation device to lessen the number of bathroom visits per night. I go 5 to 6 times. I've tried all other treatments. Well, so, all right, let's talk about this for a moment, Diane. Cause and effect, cause and effect. The symptom is the effect. The fact that you can't sleep is an effect driven by something. And we have to figure out what that something is. So, the first thing I'd want to know, Diane, is do you also have pain? And if you have pain, when is it the worst? Before you pee or after you're done peeing? If you have pain as your bladder wall fills with urine, and then you feel better once you pee, that's pointing us to the bladder wall. If you have pain, not before you pee, but after you're done peeing, that's pointing us to the pelvic floor. So doing neuromodulation is the equivalent of chasing the symptoms. It's not going to fundamentally repair something and heal something, but it can maybe modulate your symptoms. So what is neuromodulation? Neuromodulation, yes, you have pain before when you pee and your bladder is full. That's what wakes me up. So has anybody looked in your bladder? And if they have looked in your bladder, what did they see? Did you have a healthy, normal bladder? Or did you have Hunner's lesions? So neuromodulation uses a mild electronic impulse to re-regulate nerves. There are 2 different forms of neuromodulation. There's ankle stimulation that we call post-tibial nerve stimulation, and then there's sacral neuromodulation, which is done in the lower, down by your sacrum. Sacral neuromodulation requires surgery. They have to do surgery to implant the electrodes down by those nerves, and then you will wear a belt with a TENS unit, and you will have that for about 2 to 3 weeks, and you will have a voiding diary, and the goal here is to see if that is changing your symptoms. It's important that you understand that sacral neuromodulation, any form of neuromodulation, is not approved for pain care. And there are some doctors who say, hey, it might help with your pain, let's do it. But the data does not support that. Where neuromodulation is the most successful is with patients who have incontinence or patients who have extreme frequency urgency. Okay, so let's compare the two. They both target the same nerve. In fact, sacral neuromodulation was invented at UC San Francisco, where I was a patient. That's where they sent me. And Dr. Richard Schmidt and Dr. Chanago thought, hey, maybe this is neurological. Let's try stimulating that nerve to see if we can improve symptoms. Well, back then it was grisly. They weren't doing anesthesia when they were doing the implants. I ran the support group of the patients, many of the patients who had those early devices. And believe me, they were not happy. They were screaming in pain. The devices moved. They would have it implanted. They'd go sit in their car and the lead would move, and it was all a bust. So from the early days, they had to make a lot of changes. They had to change the electrodes so that they had little tines in them so that it would anchor in the tissue and not move when you sat down. They changed the stimulator box, gradually making it smaller over the years. But there's still a fundamental flaw with sacral neuromodulation, and that is side effects. There are hundreds of adverse events reported with the FDA with sacral neuromodulation. The most common adverse event is a deep tissue infection or MRSA infection. And if you want, I will go over to the FDA database right now and we can read off the last 10 FDA reports. They're filed every day. The other challenge with sacral neuromodulation is that it can be very, very expensive. It's a nice moneymaker for the doctor, but for the patient, it can be a challenge. So the one thing you've really got to do if you're thinking about sacral neuromodulation is you have to get in writing. Do not accept anybody telling you it's approved by your health insurance. We had a nurse who had this done. She went to her doctor. That doctor said it was approved. She went to the hospital where she worked, where they were going to do the surgery. The billing office said it was approved. She called the insurance company. They said it was approved. So she went ahead with it. A week later, she had a threat to garnish her wages because they denied it, and she owed $75,000, $80,000. Sorry about this, guys. The reason why I can drink Gatorade is because my bladder is healed. Gatorade is my happy place. If I'm not feeling well, a little tiny bit of Gatorade goes a long way. It's just left over from yesterday. I feel fine. So get it in writing that it is approved by your insurance. Do not trust anybody saying it to you over the phone. Get it in writing first. But there's a couple of things you've got to ask the doctor. Number one, what are your common adverse events? Number two, how often do you have to replace the device or surgery? In the IC course that was taught at AUA this year, it was Dr. It was either Dr. Henry Lai or Quentin Clemens when they were talking about it. And I can give you the exact quote because I have it in this magazine. That it's the IC patients who ask for it to be removed the most, explanted. So remember, they've got to do surgery to implant it. They have to do surgery again to change it when the battery runs out. And if it doesn't work, they have to do surgery again to remove the device. The longer the leads are in there, the more scar tissue grows around them, and it becomes much harder to remove them. Now, let us consider the less risky form of neuromodulation. That is called post-tibial nerve stimulation. That was created by Dr. Marshall Stoller at UCSF while they were developing sacral neuromodulation. And he was so traumatized or so stunned by the trauma of all these early patients who had this surgery. He said, guys, you don't have to operate to reach this nerve. That same nerve goes down the leg and is directly under the skin by the ankle. We can access that nerve and remodulate that nerve with a simple acupuncture needle and a TENS unit. That's called post-tibial nerve stimulation. Praise God, hallelujah, I ended up in his office. I was desperate. I would have done anything. I would have done the sacral neuromodulation. Thank God I didn't. I did the ankle stim. And I still have my tattoos where they put the needles. And I can show you. Let's see if I can find one. I don't know if you can see, there's a little tiny spot. They kind of fit. Yeah, it's right there. Right there. So it's 3 finger widths above the ankle bone, 1 finger length below the ankle bone, right here. They stick a needle right here. How do you know if you've hit the right needle? When you turn it on, the right nerve, the big toe bends down or the little toes flex outwards. If you compare the adverse events of the ankle stim, which requires no surgery, there are hundreds, probably more than 1,000 or more adverse events on InterStim, sacral neuromodulation with the FDA. In contrast, there are, I think, 2 adverse events filed with the ankle stimulation. It's cheaper, no surgery, worth a shot first. It's worth a shot first, in my opinion. Now, just for the sake of argument, let's just look at the FDA real quick. I can do that. Came right up. I'm at the mod database. I'm going to put in the brand name InterStim, and I'm just going to do this month's reports. And let's see what we find. 374 adverse events filed in September of 23. 374. So let's go to the first one. Information was received from a healthcare provider regarding a patient who was implanted for urinary and bowel dysfunction and incontinence. It was reported the patient had the procedure 3 months ago and they couldn't turn the therapy on. That hasn't worked for 3 months. Caller had difficulty communicating with the patient and his family. Okay, so devices can malfunction. So let's go to the next one. This is an important one. Information was received from a patient who was implanted. It was reported that they were feeling stimulation that was annoying and painful in the location and sometimes in the groin. Patient stated they had tried turning the stimulation off altogether, but the pain was still there. Patient stated it was driving them crazy and they could not sleep. Patient stated they had to sit down all day to work and it was very distracting. Patient stated that they last saw their doctor on Wednesday. They gave a date, but did not have any additional doctor's appointments scheduled. Patient was redirected to their healthcare provider to further address the issue. Additional information was received from the healthcare professional. The healthcare professional said that the cause of the stimulation being felt in the groin was determined, but they doubted that it was related to the device. Yeah, right. No steps were taken to resolve the issue, and it is unknown if the issue is resolved. Oh, let's just do one more. Okay. Information was received from a patient who was implanted. They saw this is an interesting one. It was reported the patient saw the physician assistant the day prior to the call, and the patient was advised to play with the therapy settings, but stated they are unsure about changing therapy settings without proper education. It was reviewed on the call, the general use of the handset, communicator, and therapy. Patient reported they are still waking up and going to the bathroom a minimum of 2 times during the night. Patient stated that they try not to drink anything past 6:30, maybe 7 at the latest. Patient stated drinking caffeine does seem to trigger bathroom use. Hello. Patient stated it seems that they're caffeine type of thing. Patient stated they are diabetic and they take a diabetic medication. Um, Patient stated okay, it's related to diabetes. Patient stated they are not sure what's happening, but stated they are in the bathroom a lot and clarified they are not getting a 50% reduction in their symptoms. Patient stated not feeling stimulation in the bicycle seat area. They stated they were feeling stimuli on their left side and their lower back on the side of the sacral area. It was inquired if the patient was feeling stimulation where the lead is implanted, and the patient confirmed yes. Okay. Yes. Diane says, why didn't my doctor bring it up? Well, number one, they might not be trained, or number two, they might not make as much money. You know, Erica says, what's my email? icnetwork@mac.com. I'm giving you the link right there to the FDA database where you can go and go through it. Honey, 370 in a month? That's crazy to me. And I've read hundreds and hundreds of those. I've done articles on those. Okay. Eddie says, I'm a male. When I'm catheterized, it's extremely painful. I don't think this is normal for other guys I talk to, and they don't have this problem when they're catheterized. Eddie, I got to tell you, it was really interesting. I am part of the American Urogynecology Society, and I get to participate in their doctor forum where there are questions. And one of the top doctors in the country was helping somebody with IC care with a very, very difficult patient. So there were, questions and answers and questions and answers. And the doctor said, remember, if the patient has pain putting a catheter in, look at their pelvic floor. That's a clear sign that that patient might have pelvic floor dysfunction. So that would be the question that I would want to know about you, Eddie. Are your muscles tight? I mean, I really complimented him because as he was going, answering all these questions from a younger urologist, he was like, phenotype, phenotype, phenotype. Look at the logical potential causes. If sticking something in there hurts, that probably means the muscles are very tight. Or in the case of gentlemen, is it possible that you've got a part of your benign prostate hyperplasia where your prostate's kind of sticking out into your urethra a little bit and the catheter is bumping up against it, and that might be painful too. Gay says she has the Axonics neurostimulator implant. Honestly, I haven't looked at the Axonics. Just out of curiosity, let's look at that one for a moment. Hold on. I'm just going to search for brand name Axonics. Same time period. And 10 adverse events filed this month for Axonics sacral neuromodulation syndrome. And let's look at it. It was reported that the patient had the Axonics device. Unfortunately, it did not work for them. They eventually just quit charging the thing. They wish they could find someone who would help them, or find something that would help them, like bladder surgery. They are tired of wetting themselves with no warning when it hits, if they are not by a bathroom, or even when they get to the bathroom, they can't hold it. And thank goodness they have pads. It's so embarrassing. Okay, so that's a substantial difference. Only 10 adverse events with Axonics versus 370 with Interstem. Okay, hold on. There we go. I just gave you that link there, right there. Okay, so Diane, they found glomerations, but not Hunner's lesions, but the glomerations mean nothing. Those are thrown out. It's being diagnostic of IC in our latest guidelines because glomerations happen with a lot of different conditions when you stretch the bladder. So that doesn't mean anything to us anymore. It's been discredited, and we've known that for about 10 years. You've been on estrogen cream for a year. It's helped some, especially during the day. I can go 2 hours without peeing during the day. Hey, small victories. Let's build on that. X1 Axis, does omega-3 reduce IC flares? No, I don't see how it would. There are several different types of flares you can have. You can have a pelvic floor flare, you can have a bladder wall flare, you can have a stress flare or a hormone flare. So we have to think method of action. I don't see omega-3 having a method of action that would help any of those. What So if it's a bladder wall, so we have a flare management guide on the IC Network website. And if you sign up for our free newsletter over on the IC Network website, you can get our 40-page flare management guide, which has hour by hour rescue plans. Let me put this back up here. Oh, I probably have to put that right here now. Nope. Sorry, I'm on the wrong computer right now. Okay, that's better. icnetwork.org. Okay. Carolyn, I saw a urologist a few days ago. Haven't been to one in 15 years. He wants to do a cystoscopy with hydro and biopsy. He thinks my IC is getting worse. So that's when we want somebody to look in your bladder, hon. I mean, if you're not responding to therapies, if you are getting worse over time, then the question is, what have we missed? What have we missed? And so our guidelines say, listen, if you're over the age of 50, you've tried and failed a bunch of physical therapies, and if the doctor suspects that you have Hunner's lesions, that is the decision maker for supporting a hydrodistension. You just have to make sure that it's low pressure, short duration. We're not doing those big high pressure, long duration hydrodistensions anymore because those damage tissue. We want to do a low pressure, short duration method, which will minimize damage and let your doctor get a good look. I'm all for that. I don't like guessing. I like facts. If I'm in pain, I want somebody to look at it. And to me, that is one reason to look at it. But Carolyn says here, you were great until 6 months ago. So Carolyn, what happened 6 months ago? What do you think happened 6 months ago that triggered your symptoms? And let me move this a little bit more. What do you think triggered your symptoms back then? Danielle says, I've talked to you a couple of times on the phone. Sure, you can call anytime. It's first come, first serve. And we do have one type of pelvic wand in our shop, but we don't have the glass ones anymore. If you want the glass ones, you have to go online, go like on Amazon. Carolyn says she's been racking her brain 6 months ago. I know, Danielle. I know. It's very nice to see you, hon. You really made me happy when we talked. Danielle said, wow, my Foley killed me for 9 months and really hurt my pelvic floor so bad. I believe that. Eddie says he does have pelvic floor dysfunction. All right. So what are you doing about it, Eddie? Are you in physical therapy? Danielle says the only time my pelvic floor doesn't hurt is after you use methadone. Well, you know, I want to think about how I want to say this. I am not against the use of opiate medication because I have used opiate medication. I'm not against it at all. But we have to have good context here on what we're trying to accomplish, Danielle. And that's why phenotyping is just so important. Because if your pain is coming from your muscles, the methadone is pointless in the sense that it's never going to fix the underlying problem. Physical therapy will fix the underlying problem. Now, what was so interesting, I got to tell you, I was working with somebody. Yeah. Okay. I always have to. I want to get the case correct. So this is somebody that I know, an IC patient that I've known for many, many years. Very, very, very severe IC, using strong pain medication, opiates, doing rescue installation, cyclosporin, etc. And she had been doing that for 20 years and really never not needed pain care. What she had never had was a pelvic floor assessment because in her consciousness she was being driven by she was in that chase against pain. The pain was terrible, she was chasing the pain. If so, thinking about cause, well, somebody told her, well, you have IC, so you have a bad bladder. Okay, and she took that to heart 20 years ago. I have IC, I have a bad bladder, that's why I need pain meds. But her symptoms, to me, I kept saying pelvic floor. Have you had an assessment? Have you had an assessment? So she finally went and had an assessment, and her muscles were terrible, terrible. She had trigger points up and down the inside of her inner thighs. The physical therapist could only get just gently touch the first layer of muscle. There was no chance of getting past that. Her muscles were so freaking tight. And she said, well, I'm not doing that again. It hurt too much. And I went, now, wait a second here. Oh, bye, Jennifer. Keep in touch, honey. Keep in touch. So what I said to her is, now, wait a second. That's a giant clue. When they touch your muscles, it hurt terribly. What were they touching? And again, she was being driven by, and it's completely understandable. I'm not saying that anything she was doing was wrong at all, but her pain levels were so high. She was reacting to the pain and she could not focus on what was causing the pain. And if she kept doing that, she was just going to be on pain meds the rest of her life because she wasn't willing to explore her pelvic floor work. And that to me would be an absolute tragedy. And that's what I told her. I thought she needed to spend 6 months to a year very gently working with a physical therapist to try to understand what was going on with those muscles. Oops. Hope this sounds okay. And Danielle says, I was told I had a dysfunctional pelvic floor, but she never told me what to do. I feel failed for 5 years. And she was like 20 years. So that's when you go back and say, what do I do? What do I do? You've told me I have tight muscles. What do I do? And that's when you get the book, Breaking Through Chronic Pelvic Pain, to learn about those muscles so that as you're working with a physical therapist, you will know exactly what they're touching, where it is. You will know where the structures are, know where the nerves are, so that as they're working on you, you can visualize, okay, she's working on the left side, she's doing this. We need to get you very, very involved in physical therapy and in learning about your pelvis and studying your pelvis a little bit more. So Carolyn, getting back to Carolyn, she says, my doctor thinks it's hormonal, that you're using estradiol for 6 weeks, not helping much. Danielle says 100, yeah. And Advil will not. Yeah, Advil never touched my pain when it was really bad. And my pain absolutely was all pelvic floor. It was bad pain. I mean, I was peeing every 5 minutes for probably, I'm anywhere from 5 minutes to every 30 minutes for 4 years, 5 years before we even learned the role of the muscles and that I should be doing something with my muscles. I had no clue. Absolutely no clue. So I'd say go back to the physical therapist or find a new physical therapist and say, okay, I've been told I have tight pelvic floor muscles. What am I supposed to do now? Carolyn says, but my doc thinks I should get a cystoscopy. I support that, Carolyn. I would want to know. I mean, listen, this flare is a mystery to be solved. We do not know why you are in this flare. We do not know what is causing this flare. And so we've got to figure that out. Oh, you guys, it says an ad's going to run in 45 seconds. I'm going to go to a little window. I'm sorry about that. That's just the way they set it up. So you're either having a bladder wall flare, or you're having a pelvic floor flare, or you have a UTI, or it's a stress flare, or it's a hormone flare. At 6 months, at this point in time, I would be very supportive of also having a next generation DNA urine test to see if you happen to have a funky infection. That's also possible that a urine culture would miss. So I'm in favor of them looking in your bladder. I think it's important to look in your bladder. Diane says, I'm thinking of getting a second opinion and going to a urogynecologist who is a pelvic floor specialist. And his site says he does national speaking on pelvic floor dysfunction. Who is it, Diane? I'd love to know. Sertaria, can you have both? Absolutely. I call that the chicken versus the egg dilemma. Which comes first, the chicken or the egg? And for us, which comes first, the bladder or the pelvic floor? They're both involved. They cannot not both be involved. But one is driving the other. If your bladder's screaming in pain, your muscles are going to get tight to protect you from the pain. So our therapeutic priority for that group is to calm the bladder down. And when we calm the bladder down, the muscles should release. But that's a small group. The far bigger group is they sustain a muscle injury, but they have no idea they have a muscle injury. And then one day they get the symptoms of frequency, urgency, pressure, pain. They call the doctor, I run to the doctor, I have a UTI. And the doctor goes, let's culture it. And the doctor will usually say, let's do this antibiotic. We're waiting for the culture results. Culture results come back negative. The doctor goes, maybe you got one anyway. Let's just do a short course of antibiotic. It doesn't work. Go back to the doctor. Doctor might go, let's just do a long course of antibiotics. That doesn't work. Go back to the doctor. The doctor goes, well, maybe you've got overactive bladder. Maybe you've got prostatitis, and they give you the prostate meds or the overactive bladder meds. They don't work. It's now a year later. You're really suffering. You'll go back to the doctor, and you get the dreaded, hey, I think you've got interstitial cystitis, this quote unquote incurable bladder disease, which of course we know is wrong. But you want to get better. So what do? They give you the diet. You follow the diet. They give you the Elmeron. You take the Elmeron. They give you bladder installations. You want to get better. But the problem is you don't get better. I mean, you might get a little bit better, but does the symptoms ever go away? No. So you follow that for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. And you're just on maintenance. You're just trying to control those symptoms, but the symptoms are there. What our national guidelines say is if you're not responding to therapy, if you're getting worse rather than better, take a step back and revisit the diagnosis. What have we missed? If bladder therapies are not working, what have we missed? And for these patients, bladder therapies will never fix a muscle injury. Pelvic floor physical therapy will. And once we start that pelvic floor physical therapy and we get these muscles to relax and release, guess what happens? You get better, much better. And yet again, we have yet another study which has proven the pelvic floor physical therapy is more effective than bladder therapy. But what I want you to be thinking about is cause versus effect. You are an anatomical mystery to be solved. We have to figure out underlying cause. You deserve more than a guess. You need facts. We got to check your pelvic floor. Let them look in your bladder. If it's really bad, I would say go for it. And just understand that a plain cystoscopy, not a hydrodistension, but a plain cystoscopy, you're going to have urethral pain. Hold on. You're going to have urethral pain for a couple of days because it stretches your urethra. But it gives them a chance to look at the organ and see if anything funky is going on. And so on. Next generation tests, let's make sure you don't have a fungal infection. If your flare it gets worse eating sugar, it's probably fungus. Let me go get a glass of water. I didn't get one when I started the meeting. Hold on. All righty. Now I have liquid. You know, this is kind of screwed up because my light is on my other computer. So that's why the lighting is so weird. Well, it is what it is. Okay. Danielle, pain severe left, untreated 6 weeks or longer becomes centralized. It can, definitely. That's why you want to treat that pain. Carolyn says, okay, great. I'd like to hear your opinion. Thank you. You're welcome. Sudaria says, I have hyperemia in the bladder. Okay, I have to refresh my memory. What is hyperemia? Specific changes in the bladder mucosa. It appears hyperemic with areas of edema and inflammatory aspects that may lead to ulcerated lesions. So when we look at skin, healthy cells have a very distinct appearance, and anytime the structure of cells change, that tells us that there's something going on. Inflammation can cause the structure of cells to change. Infection can certainly do that. Cancer can do that. And so the fact that they found hyperemia in your bladder really points most likely to Hunner's lesions. Um, um, I have pictures. Let's see. So let me. Okay, this is a good picture. So I want you to look at the difference between these two pictures. So these are pictures taken from patients with lesions. So this is the absolute definition of hyperemia. These big red bloody spots. Okay, that's very different from this. Okay, these red spots are glomerations and petechiae. So they believe that when you stretch the bladder wall, this is what happens, and this is not urgent, that this is not a disease happening. This is a sign that there is something else going on in your bladder. And so, you know, when you biopsy a lesion, whoops, we just went out of focus. Did it go out of focus for you guys? The camera just went out. Oh man, this is definitely one of those days. Did it go out of focus for you guys? Because it went out of focus for me. Let's see if the camera is gonna adjust. Come on, camera. There we go. Now we're back. That was funny. Okay. So what the research shows us is that when you biopsy in the middle of one of these big red areas, it's massive inflammation. I mean, inflammation means that there's basically kind of a war going on there. That's a sign that your body is trying to repair something or fight something. And the question now is really, what are they fighting? And we have research now which has connected Hunner's lesions to viral infection. So when you think about a bladder infection, you're thinking bacteria, but you got to understand that uh, infections can come from viruses in the bladder. COVID can infect the bladder. Did you have COVID? And Caroline, did you have COVID 6 months ago? Because COVID can affect the bladder. Epstein-Barr can affect the bladder. Polyoma can affect the bladder. And so it is possible to get a viral infection in your bladder. And that's what the research is now fairly consistently showing in patients with Hunner's lesions, is that it is a viral infection. Um, Danielle says, I will for sure call you. Too much to explain. Okay. I would also like to buy the book and the pelvic wand. Not a problem. Danielle says, can they imitate chronic yeast infections? You can have chronic yeast in your bladder. And again, that's another flaw of a urine culture. It's a typical urine culture doesn't look for fungus. And yet we now have research that has shown that some patients actually do get a candida yeast infection in their bladder. And I'm one of those. I had one for 2 years. It was a beast. Candida glabrata is surging across the world. We're seeing a lot more cases of systemic yeast infections that are very, very difficult to treat because they're drug resistant. So that's absolutely possible. And again, that's another argument for next generation testing, because it would tell us if you have a fungal infection. Erica says, thank you for all you do. Thank you, honey, very much. Oh, you know what? I saw that come through. Do you want me to try to respond to it while you're here without using any personal information? You tell me, hon. Erica, I see it right here. Do you want me to try to answer it right now? You tell me yes or no. I'm reading it now. Do you want me to, can I read it out loud? And you guys are on a 5-second delay, so let me know. And yeah, wrong supplement, wrong tea. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. We've really moved away from IC as a bladder condition to really being more neuromuscular. I have a history of extremely tight muscle tension in my neck. Me too. And shoulders and back of skull. I see a massage therapist when possible. Is there anything my massage therapist can do in the place of a physical therapist? Yeah, if they can, I would definitely have them try to work on your low back and your upper legs and your glutes. I think anything that will help relax those muscles would be a very good thing to do. Um, but they're not going to be able to do the internal physical therapy, which is going to be the most effective. It's very important that you go to a physical therapist at least once and have a proper internal pelvic floor assessment so that we can try to identify where the dysfunction is. because sometimes it's on the left side, sometimes it's on the right side, sometimes it's very shallow, sometimes it's very, very deep. And so we've got to try to figure that out. We've got to figure out where the dysfunction is so that we can apply the right therapy to the location that it's in. Muscle groups, each muscle group has different relaxation methods. I'd say head on over to physical therapy. There's a great website, pelvicrehab.com, where you can search for physical therapists by zip code. You're welcome to give me a phone call. I'm happy to talk to anybody. It's not a problem at all. And let's see what we can do to try to get you moving in a better direction because a lot has changed, my friend. A lot has changed. All right, I can stay as long as you have questions. So, any more questions out there? We've been doing this for almost 2 hours. I was going to try to limit it to 2 hours because I've been talking too much and hurting my TMJ. But Carolyn says, after my cystoscopy with hydrodistension and biopsy, will I be in pain? Yes. Yeah. I mean, but this is where method matters, Carolyn. Don't be afraid of it. Listen, you pay them, they don't pay you. You are the boss. You get to set the terms. And so this is what I would do if I were in your situation. Number one, I would want the doctor to really thoroughly explain what he intends to do. I would ask, will you be doing a low pressure, short duration to minimize trauma? I don't want you to massively stretch my bladder. I do not want you to hurt anything. I want you to look. I'm good with that, but nothing high pressure. It's all low pressure, short duration, like the American Urology Association instructs. There are two things you got to be kind of prepared for. And that is sometimes patients can get an infection after a hydrodistension. So um, uh, if a day or two later your symptoms suddenly flare, and if you have a fever, you always, always, always want to call that doctor right away because that post-operative infection is fairly common. Usually they will give you an antibiotic uh, before, during, or after just to try to minimize any risk of that. So the big question now is about pain. Because the bladder is a hollow organ like your stomach. Obviously, the more full it gets, the more painful it will hurt. That's the way you traumatize a hollow organ is by stretching it. That's why a really full stomach hurts. Well, a really full bladder will hurt, and that's why you always want to be under anesthesia. Um, the type of anesthesia matters. Um, my goal. So whenever you go in for an outpatient procedure at the hospital, you go in for your appointment. They bring you back. You change clothes. You put your gown on. They put you up on a bed, and they start an IV. And the IV usually has something in it to just kind of chill you out so that you're not freaking out. Before the surgery, the anesthesiologist will usually come in just to say hi and introduce themselves. Hey, I'm Jill. I'm going to be your anesthesiologist. I'm not an anesthesiologist, just giving you an example. And the anesthesiologist is going to say, do you have any concerns that I can help you with? And my concern has always been, I want to be able to pee. I can remember I had a laparotomy in the September of 1993, and they used really, really strong anesthesia, and I couldn't urinate for about 12 hours. And they sent me home that way. They thought I peed in the bathroom. I hadn't peed in the bathroom. I was sent home with this ginormous bladder. And finally, it wore off at like 1 in the morning, and I was able to slowly empty my bladder. So I told the anesthesiologist that, and I said, listen, I got one goal. I want to be able to urinate within 30 minutes of waking up in the recovery room. And the anesthesiologist was like, not a problem. I know exactly what to do. We're going to use propofol. Propofol is that anesthetic that Michael Jackson died from. But you have to understand, Michael Jackson was doing a lot of it, and he was not supervised. But I've had propofol now 3 times, and it knocks you out quickly, and you wake up quickly, and it does not numb the nerves in your bladder, so you can't pee afterwards. So I was able to urinate after my DNC, after my hysterectomy, within 20 minutes. That was a huge goal for me. But my second concern was pain management. And I told my doctor, I will not do this without a couple of days of Vicodin or Norco. It's that simple. And I want that prescription in hand before the appointment. I'm not asking for a month's supply. I'm asking for a week's supply at the most, even 3 days supply. Because I cut it in quarters or cut it in half, and I could make 5 pills last 10 days or more. And so I was very, very clear with my doctor that I expected and demanded pain care at least that first day. And I said, I want the prescription in my hand now so I can take it home and fill it, because honestly, I don't trust your discharge people. I think that they could just say, take an Advil. And I'm not going to do that. I know better than that. I want some pain care. And the thing about Norco is that it is a very, very short acting opiate. It has a time of action of 3.5 hours. It's not fentanyl. It's not OxyContin. A little bit over a couple of days just to get you through any peaks of pain. Makes total sense. It makes total sense. And that any pain, the pain for the most part is going to just be in the urethra, because they're going to stretch the urethra when they stick that scope in. And but with that little tiny bit of Norco on board, it kind of helps you get through that. And that urethral pain usually resolves within a day or two. You just have to bite your lip when you're peeing a couple of times. So I'm not afraid of that, because I've had that done. And I'm the boss. They work for me. I pay them, and I tell them what I want. Another question you can ask is, okay, you're going to do a hydrodistension to look at my bladder. What are you going to do if you find something? If you find a Hunner's lesion, do you intend to treat it? And if they say yes, you're going to say, great. Well, how do you intend to treat it? You're going to laser it? You're going to give me a steroid injection? Tell me what you intend to do. If they say, no, I'm not going to treat it, your question is going to be, why? Why would you not treat a lesion? Lesions respond beautifully to treatment. And the number one cause of long-term chronic pain in the IC patient, intense pain, is an untreated Hunner's lesion. So if they don't treat it at the time that they find it, you're eventually going to have a hydrodistension again so that they can treat it correctly. And so you want to make sure that they're prepared to treat, because it would be a tremendous lost opportunity. Does that make sense? Kind of, sort of? I was talking with somebody. Yeah, okay. I was talking with somebody last week who was kind of obsessing about lesions, even though the symptoms were really not suggestive of lesions. It was like, well, I think I have lesions. I think I have lesions. It's just living in there. I think I have lesions. and couldn't get past that. It's like they want to do a hydrodestension cystoscopy to look, and I'm like, great. If you think you have lesions, for goodness sake, let them look in your bladder so that you can get an answer. And because this person didn't have pain, I said, in my opinion, you don't have lesions because lesions are very, very painful. And you say you have no pain. So why do you think you have lesions? And so, I basically just said, listen, if you can't stop thinking about it, because at this point in time, they're absolutely obsessing about it, do it. Get the answer. And when it comes back, you don't have lesions, you can put that to rest once and for all. Sometimes our head gets in the way. I've shared that my first year, I absolutely believed that I had cancer. Even though my doctor said, you don't have cancer, I'm like, I don't believe you. I don't believe you at all. With this pain, I think I'm dying of cancer. I want you to open me up. And the doctor was like, really? And I'm like, hell yeah. I want you to look. I think I'm dying. And they opened me up, and I wasn't dying, and it wasn't cancer. But I'm glad I did it because I would have been obsessing about it otherwise. I could not stop myself from worrying about it. Eddie says, doctor said he would have to scrape the scarring in my urethra. And when I woke up, he said I would have to have a catheter in for 2 days. Is there another alternative to this? Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I can see why you would want to have a catheter if they've scraped the urethra to protect the area that they scraped so that urine wasn't going into any of the wounds that might have been left behind. So I can understand why they would want you to have a catheter for a couple of days. Um, yeah, I don't know. That's a that would be a good question for your doctor. Diane said, "Is a milk steamer with a drop of pure almond extract safe?" Yeah, definitely. I seem to be okay with dairy, but I'm unsure of the almond extract. Honey, the almond extract, any of the alcohol in the almond extract, if you put it in something hot, will just gas off. You could always just microwave it, and that would get rid of any of the residual alcohol. I wouldn't worry about that at all. You don't need to do a lot, just a little bit. A couple of drops, you'd be fine. And just microwave it. And we can get steamers at Starbucks too. I mean, Starbucks makes steamers without coffee, and you can get a little bit of flavoring in those too. They're just, um, uh, Starbucks is torture because I love the smell of coffee, and I just like want to go in there and I want to order a pumpkin spice latte and I want to order a pumpkin scone, and I'm not doing any coffee anymore, and I don't want the weight gain of the eating scones all the time. Sudaria says, yes. Sudaria says, my urine is cloudy sometimes. Not really that concerned about that. So I have Hunner's ulcers. Is that what you're saying? I don't know what you have, hun. You're an anatomical mystery to be solved. I don't know what you have. All I can tell you is Hunner's lesions are very, very painful. Patients with Hunner's lesions are often down to eating 4 or 5 foods. They are in a lot of pain. They're peeing a lot. Um, but estrogen atrophy can cause some of that same sensitivity. See you later, Eddie. Thank you. Carolyn says, I don't think I have lesions, but will it show other things? Yeah, I can show you a picture. You want to see a weird picture of what somebody's cystoscopy found? This is one of my favorite pictures. You see that? Look at that. See that area right there? That is a bladder stone. It's crystals. and the crystals were growing out of the bladder wall because he had sustained a massive injury. And sometimes when tissue, he'd had multiple surgeries, many, many surgeries. And sometimes the surgeries damage calcium metabolism pathways, and the calcium has to go somewhere. And so what happens is it grows out stones. And the stones can be that you can see that they're very sharp. Stones also tend to be covered in a lot of bacteria. And so if you've got stones floating around in your urine every single time your bladder fills up and then empties, that stone is scraping your bladder wall and irritating it. That's one of the reasons why we want somebody to look in your bladder. If you're struggling a lot. You pee a lot with pain, but consider when it's a pain the worst, before you pee, while you're peeing, or after you're done peeing. Oh, you were wondering because of the hyperemia? Well, the hyperemia is definitely looks to be more suggestive that you might have a lesion going on there. And so, based upon my reading, you're gonna have to talk to the doctor about that a little bit more. They might need to cauterize something in there, inject it with a steroid. Diane says, thanks. I'm trying smoothies with a quarter cup of blueberries, a half a cup of butternut squash with half a scoop of collagen powder for breakfast. Are those safe for the bladder? They should be. I How does it taste? Yikes. I can't imagine the taste of a butternut squash smoothie cold. Does it taste okay? I mean, the blueberries are fine. Collagen's probably going to be fine. Butternut squash is certainly bladder friendly, but it does not sound very appealing to me. When I do smoothies, I go for tropical fruit smoothies. I will do bananas and mangoes with ice and coconut milk. Sudaria said I had Botox, so it's much anymore. It's much anymore before. I don't understand. So maybe those were in the area that they did the Botox. Maybe that's a residual of having the Botox treatment. I have no idea. So you can ask the doctor about that. Interesting. You are truly an anatomical mystery to be solved. Served. So you had Botox, so it's much better. Good. I'm glad the Botox helped. I'm really glad the Botox helped. Excellent. Did you have the Botox in your bladder wall, or did you have the Botox in your pelvic floor muscles? It is pouring outside. Absolutely pouring outside. I'm really surprised we have power. Just pain afterwards now? Okay. So just remember, pain as the bladder fills with urine, we associate with the bladder wall. Pain during urination, we associate more with the health of the urethra and or a UTI. Pain after urination, we're going to associate more with the pelvic floor. So I would want to know what your pelvic floor exam found also, Sudaria. If your muscles are tight, we got to work on that. That's a very important treatment target. All right, guys. Well, listen, it's been 2 hours, and I really strained my TMJ talking too much last weekend because I did a 4.5 hour meeting and I paid for it all week. So we're close to being done now. Diane said, my bladder is painful because of estrogen atrophy. I've been using estriol cream on the urethra and vagina for a year. My primary care provider said the skin looks good down there. I'm still very diet sensitive. Okay, so Diane, even with using the estrogen, you're never going to have a 20-year-old bladder again. And so this is where you want to be maybe trying one of the chondroitin-based supplements like Bladder Rest, Cystomin, Bladder Builder, or Cystoprotect. Anything with chondroitin is believed to kind of coat the bladder a little bit more, give you more of a coating effect. And so that might give your bladder just that little bit more protection that would make it a little bit more comfortable. And you can find those in the IC Network shop. Sudaria says, I have tight muscles. It burns after I pee. I used to hurt a lot before, but you got bladder Botox. Okay, but Sudaria, that's not going to fix tight muscles. If you have tight muscles, you still have to go to physical therapy. Diane says the butternut squash is frozen in cubes from Walmart and they blend well and it tastes good. Good. I made butternut squash soup not too long ago. I mean, I'd made it a couple of times this fall and I just kind of had enough. I'm kind of doing right now, what I'm doing is spaghetti squash. I love spaghetti squash. And I'll put, sauteed veggies on it and anything at all like that. So yeah, Sudaria, good. Yeah, you've got to get those muscles checked. And if they're tight, you have to work on them. Tight muscles will only hurt the bladder and make it worse. We've got to get those muscles relaxed and healthy. A healthy muscle feels like a raw chicken breast. It's soft, pliable, but it's got some substance to it. A tight muscle feels like beef jerky and it's painful. Carolyn says, what is treatment for bladder wall? Well, Carolyn, we have to know what caused the bladder wall in the first place. So if you have chemocystitis, so in that bladder wall subtype, there are 3 variations that we have to screen for. Variation number 1 is chemical injury, because the bladder, like any other part of the body, can be hurt. And generally, it's hurt through a chemical exposure. And so if your symptoms started after chemotherapy, the chemicals of the chemo damage the bladder. Or if you're drinking a lot of diet soda or coffee or using a lot of artificial sugar or drinking a lot of green tea, those also could injure the bladder. And so our treatment protocol for the chemocystitis patient is number 1, figure out what the irritant is and stop it. And then number 2, we've got to create an environment that will help that bladder heal. That means we have to modify that diet, get rid of all the acids. We don't want acids going on this bladder that's trying to heal this chemical injury. And with time, couple of months, it should heal right up and then things should go back to normal fairly quickly for that chemical injury patient. The second thing we're going to look for is estrogen atrophy. Is your bladder vulnerable because of age and your bladder doesn't have that nice thick coating of mucus? Then we're going to treat it, number 1, with estrogen. That's the single most important thing, because just as what happens when you put a dry raisin in a glass of water, it plumps up. Well, if you give a dry cell in the vagina or the urethra estrogen, it also plumps up. So that estrogen is the priority number 1. And then the treatment is going to be something that will coat the bladder. And this is where Elmeron used to shine, but Elmeron now is associated with blindness, retinal damage. So it's kind of off the table for most patients. I mean, it's still available, but in our AUA guidelines are very clear. Patients must be told of the risk of eye disease. They should have a baseline eye exam before they start treatment, and they have to have their eyes checked regularly because we want to make sure that the retina is not damaged. So, but for the great majority of patients out there, they've moved on. And so this is where you can go to the chondroitin-based supplements for kind of long-term use, just to try to give the bladder a coating. I mean, long-term, 6 months maybe, and let's see if your symptoms get better. And if your symptoms get better, you can slowly reduce and see if you don't need the supplement anymore. Or for very, very severe symptoms, if you're in a very, very severe bladder wall flare, they can do rescue installations where they put lidocaine and heparin directly into the bladder to numb the nerves, calm the nerves down, and coat the bladder. And they can do rescue installations every week for several weeks. Those would be the treatments for that. Our last mini subtype in this category of bladder wall would be chronic infection. And that's where we want to do something like a next generation DNA urine test to make sure that urine cultures didn't miss something, or to make sure you don't have a fungal infection. And if they find that, then we've got to do the treatment appropriate for the infection, either the antibiotic or the antifungal. All right, guys. Well, listen, if you find these meetings helpful, please come on over to the IC Network and join our mailing list so you can get our free newsletter, or better yet, become a member so you can get our magazine, which is where I put my hardest work is in our magazine. And or come on over and get something in our shop, because that's what keeps me alive in doing this. So, we have bills to pay, and with winter coming, we got big power bills coming. So, any purchase that you can make for supplements and heating pads and things like that are always greatly, greatly appreciated. And of course, you can always make a donation too. That would be wonderful too. All right. All right, guys, my friends, I wish you well. Have a wonderful week. Stay warm, stay cozy. I'm going to go put on some polar fleece and grab a heating pad because I'm actually kind of cold right now. So I'll see you guys later. Have a good one. Bye-bye now.